All set.
My name is Rick Leaf. I'm Chair of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. This open meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law on March 29th, 2023. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. All members of the Master Plan Implementation Committee are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The Act allows the Master Plan Implementation Committee to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. I'll call attendance for this skeleton crew that we have here tonight. Julianne Hirsch.
Here.
Millie Milton.
Here.
Ashley will be joining us late. Tracy's not here. Fran Baxter.
Here.
Jean Kennedy.
Here.
Jean Cahill, has she joined us? No. Rick Leaf is here. John Campbell will be joining late. And Jen Tolman.
Here.
Okay. First item on the agenda was to get an update from Ashley on what's going on with the dam removal, but we'll just defer that. Ashley said she will be joining us, so we'll wait for her to join and then bring this up a bit later on in the meeting. There was an article in the local papers about a fairly significant dam removal project going on in West Boylston, a historic dam. I guess that prevented silt from getting into the Wachusett Reservoir a long time ago. Isn't needed anymore, and I guess there's a project ongoing right now to remove that dam. So maybe when Ashley comes on, maybe she can point Vinny over to West Boylston, see what they're doing over there. I think it's a little bit different situation. It's not a dam near the center of their town. It's more near access down to the reservoir. Is that kind of your impression, Julianne?
Yes, but it'd be really interesting to know exactly how they do that. Like, do they do it little by little? You know, the engineering of it. I'm really curious to know how that happens, and maybe Ashley can fill us in, or maybe you all know how it's done.
I'm no expert in dams. I say the word a lot. Other than that, I'm no expert in it. Let's push this agenda item off, see if Ashley joins us later on, and we can bring this up again and see if she knows anything about what's going on in West Boylston, or if she wants to find out some more about that. So we'll move on to the next item. It's an update from Julianne and Lori about what's going on with our downtown beautification, which I want to say I've been in and out of downtown quite a bit. I think a really nice job is being done down there with the planters and the work on the strips and the work the garden club did in front of the old town hall. Things are coming up very nicely there. So, Julianne, you want to go first?
Okay, sure. So, you know, I'm sure you've all seen the efforts that we've made, and I just wanted to say that strip at the corner of 135 and 20 is not quite what it will be in a few weeks. Gary Phillips has been doing tons of work there. He's been watering every single day. As you know, this is a challenging weather situation, but once they take hold, I think it's going to look really nice. And so maybe this is the time to mention that when we were working one Friday night and one Saturday morning, and Gary and I both noticed that it's very noisy when you are in that part of town. And the noise definitely comes from traffic that's probably going a little too fast, but also now that it's summer, windows are down and people are playing their music very loudly. And and I mean, we all have different taste in music and everyone's music taste is not everyone else's. And I briefly looked up when I got home whether there are such things as noise ordinances, and a few towns actually do have something like that. I think it's Leominster has one uh, talking about this. And one of the reasons they cite that they have an ordinance about it is because when you're playing your music very loudly, you may not hear an emergency vehicle. So unfortunately, I ran out of time today. I was going to call the police chief and see if there's anything on our books about that. But it's something to think about if we want that whole section to be pleasant and a nice place to walk. So, while we were there was one like near accident and an argument about people going into the right lane to make that right turn onto 135. And we noticed very few people walking and crossing the street. So I think we have to start, this is just my opinion, thinking about how we can make that more of a pleasant experience. I'd love to hear from people about that. And just one more thing on my report is that we're deciding on the ARPA money, and I put in for the tree program. So hopefully I can convince my fellow select board members to vote for $25,000 towards a tree program.
Oh, good. Thank you for that. That will be a big help. Lori, updates?
Thank you, Julianne, for your support on the tree program. That's exciting. So I look forward to hearing more from you on that, whether they support it or not. In other news, for the downtown beautification streetscape project, I'm happy to report that the RFP is complete. I have everything that I need to release that on the street, except for one thing, which I was hoping to get today before I went on vacation for the next week. And that is to get a definitive response from the property owner, the new property owner of the parking lots that Fatouche Restaurant sits on and the Doggy Den. So there is a new owner. She primarily resides in Hong Kong, so she isn't the easiest person to get in touch with. So I did speak with the property manager. So she has been the go-between. And she seems very interested in participating in the program. She did send me an email today with some follow-up questions. She was concerned that if she doesn't like the design, is the town gonna force her to participate? And of course, I said absolutely not. She also was concerned that participation would mean that she couldn't sell the property should she choose to, which of course is also not the case. So I responded to her questions and I gave an extended deadline since I wasn't able to release the RFP today. I figured why not give her an extra week since I'm going to be on vacation anyway. So I told her that if I didn't have a definitive answer by next Friday, then on July 1st, I was planning on releasing the RFP. So I am concerned, and I did explain that I am concerned that if we hold off much longer, the design won't be to the point that I need it to be in order to apply for grants. So the grants that I'm interested in applying for construction are due in May and June of next year. So they do have to be pretty far along, not 100%, but I need to be pretty solid in the cost estimate in order to apply for those grants. So that's pretty much the update that I have on the streetscape project. Does anybody have any questions?
Rick, through you, I have a question. Do you now have to juggle, I mean, if Julianne is successful in getting support for ARPA money, that's also giving you like a time frame that you have to work within, right? Will it match or benefit, like seed money for the grant that you can commit to? Because that also has to be like signed off on and spent in a time frame.
Yeah, so the 250,000 that of ARPA money that the select board authorized me to use, the contract would have to be signed with the engineering firm by December 31st. So of course, if we release the bid in a week's time, then I anticipate having a designer, an engineering firm under contract by September 1st. So we'll have plenty of time to meet that deadline.
Okay, all right, so I was getting that confused with the little 25,000 for the treescape versus streetscape. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that 25,000 should be pretty easy to spend. So if they do support the project, then I anticipate we'll be able to go forward with some tree planting this fall and then the balance in the spring. So we can certainly get a commitment to fully expend those funds in plenty of time.
Okay, so then Rick, another follow-up, when the ARPA money was discussed at the select board meeting earlier this week, select person Maselli had put in her wish list funding for just broadly saying striping of parking lots for municipal parking. So we wouldn't actually need to use ARPA money for that, because that on the Blake Street area, because that's going to be part of this grant, because Julianne could then try to take that money from her and use it for something else.
So I do not anticipate that construction will be ready to go by then. So they could certainly use that money for parking lot striping around town, but not as part of the streetscape project, because what I am envisioning is that those parking lots are gonna be repaved. So there's no point in doing the striping now if they're going to be repaved.
Right, so Rick, can I ask another? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Jean has.
All right, so
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jean, you got a question, Jean?
I do not have a question, no.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Fran.
All right, so this additional about downtown and beautification in general in revitalization. Lori, can you speak to the conversation at Design Review about potentially not being interested in parking behind buildings? I know there was some conversation about in the design review guidelines changing the recommendation to have parking behind buildings. And there was discussion about not including downtown in that and doing it in other places. But I'm wondering where that stands and how that may be compatible with what our vision is versus in contrast.
Yeah, so that was a preliminary discussion that came up at last week's design review committee meeting. I really don't think it would be a good idea to revert back to the old pattern of having the parking lots in front of the buildings, because that promotes the image of an auto-dominant streetscape. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to walk. So the last thing you want to do is have them walk by a parking lot, parked cars. It's just not attractive. It's not something that the average person wants to do. So the most attractive part of your typical commercial development is the building itself. So in a traditional downtown, you will see that the buildings most often are up to the sidewalk edge. And that tends to be the type of configuration that is the most pedestrian friendly. So that is what I would recommend that we stay with. That's what our zoning bylaws currently say. That's what our design guidelines currently say. So I'd really like to stick with that. So they didn't make any definitive decisions. It was just a discussion topic. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it more in the future.
Okay, once again, I think that a lot of good work is being done just in the general dressing up of the downtown with the parameters that we can do it. I've also noticed that some of the private business owners have been doing a nice job also in front of their businesses. Maybe that's we're inspiring them a little bit to do that, and hopefully if we do more of this, we'll find some other people sort of jumping on board, you know, in their own spaces also. This is a little bit off the point, but I was not able to watch the select board meeting Monday night. I haven't been able to watch the video of it yet. I'm just interested as to how the discussion went regarding the location of the town offices and the discussion with the committee about the possibility of relocating the offices onto the White Cliffs property. Lori or Julianne, is there any update you can provide us as to where that stands right now?
I defer to Julianne first, and then if she, I may or may not have something to add.
Okay.
So we really just got a summary of that committee's activities and their recommendation. The select board has not made any decision at all. And we haven't even really decided how to move forward with this. I do have to say that a lot of the discussion revolved around the major projects that the town is facing. The fire station, Peasley School, and town hall. And so it was kind of, just accepted that town hall is going to be a project that's, probably a good 10 years off. One of the things that Lori answered today is, so one of the things that, of course, we have to discuss is which buildings would sell and for how much. And we still don't really know the value of any of those buildings. I don't know how we go about doing that, but Lori, you commented today, and you can take it over from here, about how many housing units, for example, for West Main could accommodate, and the current town hall, how many housing units they could accommodate, because that could be significant in the developer's plans. So
Yeah, so what I did is I commented based on the existing zoning. So of course we did just approve a new multifamily development overlay district. So that's that whole MBTA zoning that everybody's been talking about. And we did include 63 Main Street, so the current town hall, in that overlay district. So the number of units is capped by the number of acres. So it has a direct relationship to the size of the parcel. So within the town hall building, it would be capped at 28 units. And then within 4 West Main Street, so that building is not within the overlay. It is within the downtown business district, which does allow mixed use. So you can do vertical, this would be vertical mixed use. So a combination of the commercial and the multifamily housing. So because the parcel, so I included the open space parcel in front of the building and the building itself. But the number of units would be capped at only 7. So that is pretty tiny. If it was to be permitted under a comprehensive permit. So that's otherwise known as Chapter 40B. Then zoning pretty much gets thrown in the trash, and so you don't have to adhere to the unit limitation under that scenario. But that pretty much, or getting a variance from the ZBA is the only way you'd be able to increase the number of units.
So it seems like, based on a number of large projects that's in front of the town right now, if the decision is made to, go forward, obviously, they're gonna have a special town meeting in the fall to talk about getting approval to do the fire station, the new fire station, and then if things need to be done in the schools, if all of the time and expense to do that is going to defer a decision on what to do with the town offices, and if 4 West Main Street is still a viable alternative for the town offices, then that, basically continues to sort of put off in the distance that one catalyst area from the downtown revitalization report that talked about developing 4 West Main Street down Blake Street back to the fire station as a possible area. So that would all have to sort of continue to be put on hold. The fire station, the Pierce Street Fire Station itself will become available certainly within that time frame. And Lori and I did a short video presentation as part of the whole lead up to the fire station to talk about reuse possibilities for the Pierce Street Fire Station, of which there are many, kind of things. So it might be interesting to see kind of what decisions are reached on that building, if they're reached sort of independently of kind of a Blake Street downtown revitalization project. So I guess nothing is going to happen here, particularly in the short term. We'll just sort of keep our eye on what's going on there, and see what else might be possible as far as downtown revitalization.
Rick.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Fred.
I was just gonna add, the next step would be if the select board agreed to select the White Cliffs property for town hall. It's not that it would get ahead of the fire station or Peasley, but at least then it would get to the financial planning committee so that it could then be put in the projected 5 and 10-year plan, and then we would have a better sense of when it would happen. But until they commit to that would be the next step.
Right. And I would agree that if there was a commitment to at some point use the White Cliffs property to relocate the town hall, that would then open up the possibility to view, the scenario in the downtown revitalization plan as total from 4 West Main back to the fire station and see how that would all work out. So that would give us a little bit more of a picture, direction of what to do down there. Do you think, Julianne, that independent of when it may happen, that the select board would try and at least reach a decision as to where the town hall should be relocated when it's finally done? Or is that going to be deferred also?
No, I think we all agree that the town can't keep carrying all these empty buildings. So we know that we have to, if it's White Cliffs, then we're gonna have to know that it's 10 years down the road or maybe even more, but we'll make sure that the building remains, in good condition. So we all understand that, we can't keep because at the yearly expenses, it starts to add up. But can I ask Lori a question? So how do you go about, say, reaching out? So do you reach out to special real estate people to figure out what the market would be for 4 West Main?
So I understand. I've been talking with Tim about an approach. And one thing that you can do is you can issue a request for proposals to lease the property and see what the interest is. So people would submit their proposals. I know that there is one business in particular that is interested in leasing the restaurant space. So they would compete against each other, assuming that there's more than just the one. And then the town would look at their application, look at their financial information, any sort of references they might have, and determine whether they want to sign a lease with any of the folks who submit proposals. Now, another possibility is to hire a commercial realtor and list the property, and then see if the realtor, well, of course, there's a cost associated with that, and see if they can find tenants who would be interested in occupying the space.
Which approach gets you the most activity?
Well, I'd probably go the free route first. I would issue the RFP and see what you get. And then if that's unsuccessful, maybe explore the other option. I know Tim has had experience in his prior town, in the town of Grafton, in leasing out a commercial property. Sorry, municipally owned property. So he's probably the best one to speak to.
All right, before we move off this topic, anybody else on the board have any comments or questions about just kind of what's going on in downtown in general? It seems like in the short term, we are making good progress in terms of dressing the place up and doing some beautification efforts. When the RFP is released on the Blake Street project, we'll get a good idea of what might be possible on Blake Street, at least to start to improve, that area. And then just sort of keep an eye out to see what decisions are made relative to the other buildings there. And once again, if the fire station project is approved at special town meeting, at that point, then I think there'll probably be some more activity to look at, what are the options for eventually reusing the fire station on Pierce Street? And that plays into, part of the downtown revitalization, depending on what gets decided there. So there's a number of things to watch. Once again, any other comments or questions before we move on to the next agenda item? Jen?
I just had a quick thing. Robin Kennedy reached out to Terry, our chair for Cultural Council, and she invited us to coffee. So we went last week, and we were talking about all the cool artsy things we're doing in town, and she said that her assistant was going to get us the information for the railroad companies nonprofit or something, anyways, so that we could I showed her the photos from the Tower Hill cool metal things that they have, and she was going to get us an info of who to contact about try to get grant money to do that sort of artsy project we had talked about at a previous meeting. And she had some other things too, but I don't want to take up all the time. So it was a really good meeting, I felt, because she had reached out, and I'm kind of excited.
Oh, good.
I do want to tag in quickly on that the beautification, I think the flowers have been great, but I also do think that the chairs out front have been really nice too.
Great.
I see things happening, which is nice.
Mhm.
Jen, could you just remind us who Robin Kennedy is?
She's our senator. She represents Worcester, Boylston, West Boylston, Bolton, Berlin, and us. I think I got it.
Jen, did you talk about a specific project, or CSX would fund any project?
I specifically told her that we had an idea to kind of clean up that area. We were talking about Blake Street and how we did the chair reveal there because wanted to bring some attention to that area and the lack of a pocket park, which could be a cool one. And so that was sort of our intention of having the chair reveal there, and the chairs are cute there and people have been using them. And so we said, oh, it's really too bad the railroad leaves all their junk there. And I said, we have this really cool idea. And she said, oh, we've got this group, and it's not a nonprofit. I forget what she called it. Anyways, who they like to fund nice little feel good projects, basically. And
Hmm.
so she was gonna get us the information on that. And I was like, well, a grant for $5,000 or $8,000 is a feel good from them, but for a cultural council to raise that kind of money, that would take us years. So I was like,
Yeah.
sure, we'll take your information.
Wow, great.
Good things.
Yeah, just trying to, continue to make connections and see what happens.
Another thing, Julianne, for your information, today Tower Hill had the annual meeting and we gave out our community greening awards, one of which went to Gary Phillips for the work that he did at Watson Park. And I hadn't met him before, but he was there to receive his award today. So I went up to him, introduced myself, and complimented him on the work that you guys are doing downtown. He said that he's really interested in that and wants to continue to help out with that. So I was glad to get to meet him and be able to express appreciation for the work that's going on there, as well as the things he's done over at Watson Park. So I think he's a good resource to have going down the road for other things we might want to do.
He's amazing. Yes.
Who was that?
Gary Phillips. Gary Phillips is our native plant expert in town. He's just taken it on as a major hobby and really educated himself in native plants. And he redid all of Watson Park. I think he's doing a meadow over there. And he's working with FedEx about the invasive lupin in the back of that property and is helping out with that strip there. He's a very dedicated man. And
He actually did a class at the library in the fall, and he applied for a grant from the Cultural Council, which we gave him a small grant. And he sent us photos of his porch and cut off water, milk jugs, like gallons, covered in snow. But the entire deck was covered with them, and there were seedlings getting ready for this year. So he's really quite amazing, I think,
Yeah.
to do all that completely voluntarily and just because he wants to. So I think it's
Yeah.
cool, and I was happy that we were able to support him in that.
Is he a Northborough resident?
yes.
Oh,
hmm
If you haven't been over to Watson Park at the entrance there, just go over
Yeah.
there and take a look at what he's planted and the way he's used stones painted with the names of the plants on them, everything. He's really done a nice job over there. And they attract pollinators and sequester carbon and use native
Yeah.
varieties. There's a lot that we recognize him for at Tower Hill for the good work he's doing over there.
nice.
Okay, moving on. I see that Ashley has joined us. Ashley, we deferred discussion on dam removal. I just wonder, we'll go back to that. Do you have any further updates on kind of what's going on with that at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I met with them, on another matter. It's a bit uncomfortable for me just because I think I'm in a position where I probably shouldn't be the one to be talking to them about town stuff. I think they wouldn't feel comfortable saying no, even if they wanted to. It's a bit strange. So if we have another person who might want to take the lead and I can kind of be, at least face to face with them and I can be in the background working on stuff. But at least having direct communication with them would probably be better. But they were actually very excited about dams in Northborough. I think they really feel like Northborough is the next big focus for them. I think right now, as an organization, they're most focused on outreach and really engaging communities, and they feel like Northborough would be a place that they could really do that in a big way. But I think that's a few years down the line. But in terms of the dam removals, I just kind of asked them if there's a general process, how would they lead it? And it could go a number of ways. Town could lead it, they could lead it, but I kind of said we don't really have the expertise here in town, so it would be great if they could just kind of give us a list of steps and things we could do to kind of tee everything up. So I need to follow up with that just to get that and move that along. But I did want to put it out there, and I think Jean Cahill may have left. I don't know if she's still on the committee, but if she is, I would talk to her about maybe being that point of contact for them. If she is not, then maybe another person might be willing to just be the person that emails them and I can I'd be happy to just do everything in the background on that.
Is it a point now where Vinny could sort of take it over and coordinate directly with Oars?
Yeah, it really could be. I think so. That might be the best way to go. And then I can talk to Vinny and just tell him I'm happy to, push things along and do whatever needs to be done. And then he could be the point person with Oars. Because I
think if
just
we-
feel like, my position with them, it just puts me in a bit of an awkward position, working with them in this way, from the other side. So.
It seems like you and Gene have moved this far enough down the road here that if Vinny's interested in doing it, he could just coordinate with them. And then from time to time, our committee could just, bug Vinny once in a while as to what's going on, kind of thing. And then if he wants to use you as a technical resource, he could do that. So maybe could you have a
Definitely.
discussion with Vinny and see if he's willing to take on that
Yeah.
responsibility?
Yeah, I'll do that. And I'm working with him on another project in a similar way through the Open Space Committee. So I think that makes good sense. That works for me.
Good. Okay. Why don't we put this on the agenda again for next month, and you can give us another update here as to how that's all going, kind of thing. And I think it makes sense to just let the staff get in the middle of this now, and then we can perform our role, which is to bug people about what are they doing, kind of thing. So good.
Rick?
Okay, thanks. The other thing, Ashley, go ahead, Julian.
So about this, working with Vinny, I totally agree, but I think we should talk to Jean and see if she still wants to stay involved, because my suspicion is that she would like to stay very involved. So it would be great if she could and work with Vinny, since I don't know why she's not here tonight, but she did do a lot of work to get us to this point, and she knows the players. So I think it'd be great if she would stay on. I'll talk to her and see if you want, or Rick, you can reach out to her.
You could do that. The only thing I'm thinking is Jean was the one who recommended that she drop off of this and actually take it over. I'm not sure why she decided to do that, but she seemed to want to get out of the middle of it for some reason.
No, I think she felt like, I don't know if she felt like she wasn't making headway on the town end. So maybe if we encourage her, she'll be happy to do it. Sorry, we have a lot of family here, so I might not be able to stay for the whole meeting. I don't know if you can hear all the background noise, but there's a lot of it.
All right. Well, I guess why don't you at least contact Vinny, Ashley, and just see if he wants to get involved in this, and then, Julian, if you want to follow up with Jean and just see what role she wants to continue to play, let her know that Ashley's going to go into the background. And hopefully Vinny will take over, and Jean wants to play a part in this. That'd be fine.
Yeah.
The other thing, Ashley, there was an article about a big dam renewal project going on in West Boylston now, a very old historic dam that used to prevent silt from getting into the Wachusett Reservoir that isn't needed anymore. So I'm not sure if you're aware of that, or if you're not, when you talk to Vinny, you might want to have him plug into what's going on in West Boylston. There might be some good information over there.
Sure, I can talk to him about that. And I know, Berlin has been working with Oars on that dam, just over the Northborough border. So that might be helpful too, to talk to Berlin and see how that's going there. So yeah, I'll talk to Vinny and just kind of get him up to speed and see how he wants to proceed.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Next item on the agenda is this review letter that we've drafted based on our meeting last time to try and indicate to the select board and the land use boards that there are decisions the town has to make to move forward economic development and downtown revitalization. And a byproduct of that was to give a status update on where we stand with the master plan in general. So people got copies of that. We had some comments from John Campbell and from Gene Kennedy, which Lori factored in and sent out an updated version. And then just recently, mid to late afternoon, Amy, who can't be here tonight, sent in some other comments, which I think Lori sent out to us. So I'm not sure who's seen what at this point, whether people have at least seen the letter that carried John and Jean's comments. Maybe not at this point, Amy's comments. Once again, the point of the letter is to do two things. It's to update the select board and the land use boards on the current status of the master plan in general, and then to indicate that there are items around economic development and downtown revitalization that really can't be moved on until the town makes some decisions about how far and how fast they want to move on things. So that's kind of the point, but I'll open up the floor now to comments or questions. Who'd like to make a comment or any about the thing? Is any other changes people would like to see? And also, we need to make some decisions around the changes that Amy suggested that weren't in the last draft that Lori sent out. So floor is open.
So,
Anybody have any
we did or didn't get the changes that Amy made, because I didn't see anything on that.
I forwarded you changes. It was later in the afternoon, maybe around the 3 o'clock hour, somewhere around there.
The last thing I have from you is from 220, the Metro West employee survey.
It might have been, I can check my email.
Okay, I'm just wondering, maybe it
I'll
went
see
to.
if I can open it and maybe share it with everybody.
Yeah, so there should be the two documents now. There is the document that we thought was kind of the one that carried all the changes, and then there's a separate document that doesn't have Amy's changes in it. It's her changes to that document. So there are two things we're kind of
I
working
can
on
share my
simultaneously right now.
screen. This is the version that Amy
Okay, I
commented
think it
on.
went to my other email. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe you can let me know offline
Yeah,
which
Yeah.
one you want me to use.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
I see it. Yeah.
So her changes are tracked in the text. The original black was my attempt at incorporating the comments that I received from both Jean and John Campbell. And then the red are her changes. I did notice that Jean had his hand up, so he probably has something he wants to say.
Well, I read Amy's comments, and I understand what she means about not having too many community meetings or community meeting overload. I just wanted to emphasize that my original thought was more along the lines of maybe a roundtable discussion between specifically the planning board and the selectmen on economic development issues as a way to clarify their thinking and as a way to either move some of those items along or, depending on what their thoughts are, maybe have us go in another direction while some of those economic development items sort of simmer for a while. I agree with Amy that probably the zoning board of appeals shouldn't be necessarily part of it. They really are just a permit granting group.
Mhm.
But it seems that some discussion by the two key policy-making organizations in town, the planning board and the selectmen, on economic development, maybe this issue that has come up in terms of housing density downtown. I know Amy has one perspective on that, and there may be other views, but having a public conversation about those items can give each of those boards some direction, but also us as a committee some direction on what we should be doing in terms of following up on master plan recommendations.
I'd just be interested in people's thought about Amy's suggestion that the zoning board of appeals is not a party to this letter. Does anyone feel strongly that they should be? Or not?
I
I
guess,
mean,
sorry.
oh, go ahead, Millie.
Okay, Fran, why don't you go ahead?
All right, so I mean, I don't think I mean, it's nothing that I think we should delay this letter on. If Amy feels that strongly, I will say that the zoning board historically does have permit process with the business area more than the planning board. And yes, they don't draft the zoning bylaws, but they do participate in discussion with the planning board over them. And they are listed as implementation partners on several of the goals for the specifically the downtown revitalization. But I just want to see this move forward. So Amy's not here, unfortunately, to explain more about why she felt that way. So whatever's going to get this, ink dried and signed and move to the next level, because the select board and planning alone will have to try to coordinate meeting time to move forward, because I think we've all heard from Lori often enough that we need specific, very direct guidance as to what is it that the town wants the downtown to be.
Okay. Julian, do you have a comment?
Well, I like the letter, and I mean, I don't know what Amy's thinking was, but it does kind of make sense that the zoning board of appeals, since they, since they grant permits and everything, they're the legal people. So they're not really the planning people. But yeah, I think that this has to go up because we have to figure out what these two boards and the town in general want us, to start really moving on. And I think they do want us to start moving on downtown, but we need to get some support from them, right? Especially if it's with an economic development committee or a person and money. So.
Yep.
I'm getting a sense that if this letter went to the select board and the planning board, at their discretion, if they wanted to involve the ZBA in part of this discussion process, they could do that. But to not send a letter directly to the zoning board, I'm not hearing a lot of disagreement about that.
And Rick, I mean, think about it. I mean, we have two planning board members on this committee. We have one select board member on this committee. We have a select person and a planning board member on design review. So if those 10 people in their variety of roles can't come up with what we should be doing so we can move forward, adding more people to it is not going to make it better. It's not going to make it easier. You just need I think those 10 people in their overlapping roles and points of view, move us to the next.
Well, I also, to your point, Fran, is that, the design standards for the look and feel really haven't been specified. So we need to clarify that too.
Millie, just an update. I have been working with the design review committee on updates to the design guidelines.
Okay.
So those will be forthcoming. They're just
Great.
not ready for prime time yet. So
Okay.
that's why you haven't seen anything.
Okay.
I do
Great
have one
stuff.
comment on the changes that Amy had recommended. This sentence right here, the master plan goals, ED21, ED24. I would really like to keep that sentence in. And the reason why is because I think it's important to pinpoint those economic development related goals that we haven't made any progress on. And part of the reason for that is because it isn't clear if there's any support. So like one of those recommendations was to extend sewer to Route 9. So that didn't fare well when I went to the select board meeting for a letter of support. So I think it's important to discuss specific goals at that meeting to see if the leadership supports those goals. Because I, as a staff person, don't want to waste my time on doing projects that aren't going to be supported by the leadership. So then it just ends up being a time suck with no positive end result. So I'd rather concentrate my limited time on projects that are supported by the leadership. So I think it's important to identify those specific goals so that we can be clear to touch on them during this roundtable discussion or whatever you want to call it.
And would it be helpful to say, maybe following that, basically to Amy's point, others are just as important, but these are the ones that have fallen behind? Maybe somehow, couch that in.
I think my feeling is that the point of this letter is to stress the need to make some decisions in the
Right.
area of economic development.
Yeah, I agree with that, Rick. Thank you.
And so I agree with Amy's comment. There are other important goals in the master plan, but that's not the point of this letter, is to point out everything that's important in the master plan hasn't been done yet,
Yep.
only to focus on, what needs to be decided around economic development. So my feeling was, I understand what Lori is saying. My feeling was the reason to leave these in and not include others is only to focus this letter on economic development. And these sort of highlight those key economic development goals. So I would vote to leave this sentence in for that reason.
Sure.
I think,
Any disagreement with this, leaving this
No.
sentence in and leaving it in?
I mean, I'm okay either way. I guess I just felt like for the letter, I would love to, Jean's comment at the end of the last meeting was really on point, and I felt like it was buried in the last paragraph of the letter. So I would just love it if we could bring to the top this request, need, however you want to term it, for these groups to come together and discuss the surveys that we haven't maybe paid enough attention to, and all of these economic development items from the master plan, and make those decisions and decide, do we hire somebody? Do we, have a committee? How are we really going about this? And how do we feel that the town wants to look at this and proceed? Because that was really Jean's comment at the end of the last meeting. And I just think that's the real need for this letter. And I think that was buried after the sort of update pieces. I just want to bring it to the top.
So which sentence, I'm trying to figure out exactly which would be the best thing to bring up. Would it be in what's in the screen right now in the last sentence in the top paragraph says the downtown revision plan offers strategies for downtown redevelopment. The MPSC needs clarity and consensus among the boards around economic development to effectively steer, blah, blah, blah. I mean, is that a sentence, like that sentence should sort of come up to the top? As sort of
I
the
feel like
introduction to the letter?
the last two paragraphs, should the select board, and we're writing this letter because we think that, these boards should consider a joint meeting to develop a clearer vision. And then, here's where we're at. These are some things to consider. Please let us know if we can schedule this meeting,
And so are you saying the select board, the planning board, and the MPIC would do a joint meeting, or just the select board and planning board?
I think all three need to come together to discuss, because the MPIC, and I mean, obviously people who were involved in the master plan itself, not everyone's on the MPIC, but everyone who kind of has been here through the process of polling the citizens, hearing their responses, figuring out what needs to be done, what people want to be done, what we should do around economic development, I think should come together and figure out how to proceed.
So would you want to say that the select board and planning board should consider a joint meeting with the MPIC to discuss? Because the way that's written to me doesn't seem to integrate the MPIC at all into there.
I don't know. I think the point of the
you're right,
letter was to
Millie.
sort of move the responsibility for taking the next step forward to basically the planning board and the select board to make some decisions as to where they want to take the town in this area.
I don't think that they can do that without us there to explain to them what's happened to this point, the process,
Yeah.
the background, and then, if they want to have few meetings from there,
Yes.
great, but I think we should be there for the first one to
And-
develop this clear vision.
Right. And that's what my concern would be, is that if you just say, oh, we should meet, there would be no cohesive agenda for them to discuss.
I agree
Right.
with you, Ashley. I think that's a good idea. And it doesn't even have to be, if we can't get a quorum, it's not like we're voting on anything. So just as many of us that as can come as
Yeah.
possible.
I have a quick thing. I found the letter to be very broad. And if you want to strategically plan something for actionable items to happen, it can't have, oh, we're going to talk about the look and feel, and we're going to talk about the town offices, and we're going to talk about this. Like in a 2-hour meeting, you can't have 2, 3, 4 boards, however many people you want in a room or in a Zoom, and talk about all 8 of these action points that are listed on here. It really has to narrow down the focus, I think, and say, we're going to talk about economic development in this one area, commercial, industrial. Okay, let's talk about that. And then X amount of time later, okay, let's talk about downtown. Okay, because you can't say, oh, let's talk about all of it all at the same time, all of us. It's just not going to.
I think, I
Optics in
think
order.
when the last meeting and Jean's point, bringing it together, we were really talking about downtown.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding and my memory, it was about downtown and how do we change the zoning downtown and how do we bring in
Yeah.
sewer downtown, all these different things. I think it's really about the downtown, and I think that's what it should focus
Yeah.
on. And I think everything else will flow from that, but that's just my perspective.
But as Lori said in her letter, our downtown isn't really big enough to justify creating an economic development position, so it is beyond that. Right?
But so our downtown plan, when we talked to the consultants, that was their recommendation, to hire somebody to work on economic development downtown. So if that's not I think that would be a major part of the position, and it would obviously include the entire town, but I think it would be a major part. So if we can come up with a clear vision for how we want to proceed with economic development in the downtown and whether we need to hire somebody or not, then I think everything else can flow from there. But I think that's that's the elephant in the room, and I think that's what needs to be figured out.
I agree that's the elephant in the room, but the master plan itself covered economic development in a much broader scope. And some of the goals that we highlight here in the letter are broader across economic development across the entire town kind of thing. And so I think part of the focus of what we want clarity on as an MPIC is certainly this plays into the downtown, but just in general, where is the town going in terms of economic development, town-wide? Because these goals that we highlight in this sentence here are beyond the downtown. So I don't think it was the point of the letter to get clarity on how to do downtown revitalization as much as it was, there's a number of goals around economic development in general that haven't been addressed at this point and need to be. And there's no doubt that as they are and a position is taken, it helps to crystallize how to work on the downtown itself. So I'm not sure we want to focus this letter as much on the downtown as
No, you're
focusing on the master plan.
You're absolutely right, Jean. And I mean, Rick, I think if we needed to focus on something, as Jen was suggesting, that would be where I would focus to try to have a big chunk of the meeting just to be focused around that. But I don't know if I agree necessarily. I think that if we're coming up with if we want to understand the survey responses and the feedback we've gotten and the master plan and the downtown plan and pull it all together and develop this clear vision. I think that's one agenda item. We're not diving deep on town offices. We're not diving deep on the zoning bylaws. We're just coming up with this broader vision, which Lori feels as the town planner that we don't have a clear vision. And so can we just do that? Can we sit and do that in one meeting and try to have consensus around how are we moving forward and what are the top priorities, or, you know, how do we, what's the general consensus on what we want in this town? I don't
Yeah.
think that's too much to tackle. I really don't, but we've gotten pretty far on it from all of the work that we've done. We have all the background information, I guess.
I would
do
just say,
agree.
Gene, why don't you go ahead, Jim? Let's hear from you.
Okay.
excuse me, I was just gonna say, I mean, it does go more than just goes to more extensive than to just downtown. I mean, I noticed that we have something called the Industrial Development Commission, a committee. And I read somewhere that they sort of not meeting much, or they're not meeting at all. So it just raised the question to me on how best to organize for economic development in the town. That includes the town-wide issues that we've seen crop up over the last couple of years: new warehousing, additional traffic, more trucks. But it also includes downtown and how best to organize to get things done downtown. So the thought was to have a general discussion about economic development and perhaps discuss possible organizational improvements that would help the town. You know, whether it's a new economic development committee or commission, or reinstituting the industrial development committee in some way to get them more active. But just have a general discussion by the policymaking boards on what they would like to see and how best to maybe have that take place.
And I think my understanding is this isn't going to be one meeting. This is going to be a series of discussions. There'll be an initial meeting to sort of lay out these issues and get feedback from people, but I'm sure that's going to generate questions and need for research. And so I see this as a process that we want the boards to go through that will eventually end up with some sort of an agreed upon position the town wants to take, which will then lead towards what does it take from a staffing perspective or a committee perspective to make it happen? And, you know, how does this play into the larger picture of attracting economic development and revitalizing the downtown? So I think we can't think of this as a point in time that this is all going to happen. The select board and the planning board are going to get together, and 2 hours later, it's going to be Eureka. I don't think it's going to happen that way at all. I think there's going to be an initial meeting that maybe, as you suggest, Ashley, we should be represented at to help frame the problems.
I agree.
And then it's going to be a process for these, the planning board and the select board to work their way through their agreements and disagreements. And to the extent we can help facilitate that, or, you know, Lori can help facilitate that, you know, we can do that. But I see this is going to take a while to figure out.
Yeah.
Which gets me back to that list of items, those bullet points. I would not delete them. I think although they're broad, it's not my expectation anybody's going to figure all that out in one meeting. But we'll get them on the table.
I guess I would hate to go into this thinking that it's going to be a series of meetings, because we've been working, let's see, I was pregnant with my 7-year-old when we started the master plan. And we've gotten a lot of data. We've gotten all the information we need. And now we have to just push things along. I don't see what needs to be talked about. We've talked it all out. We've gotten all the responses, and now we just need to pull it all together.
I think it's just a sense of direction, though, because when you say something like, determining whether the town should expand commercial, and that's a whole, under who does that fall under, And so, there's 7 bullet points here that I think deciding who takes on what, which board takes on what is going to be a challenge. And, yes, we have a lot of data, but at the same time, the master plan implementation committee is the one that has the data on the master plan. I would say
guess-
the planning board doesn't, maybe even the select board doesn't, other than their specific, representatives.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is, Lori has this feeling and
Sure.
warranted that there are items in the master plan that she wants to execute on, and she doesn't feel that there's consensus around it. So if we get some consensus from all the various boards and committees, then, as each of these things arises, we, as the master plan, we're saying, X, Y, Z, you're doing these different things, and maybe we provide some of that background that we have the luxury of having. But if there's this consensus gained from a joint meeting or meetings, but hopefully not too many, then it'll be a bit easier to move these things along.
Okay.
That's sort of how I think.
I agree there needs to be consensus. I just don't think it's going to come easily.
I
But
think
what we need to
will
do
be a
is
lot of
launch
discussion.
the discussions.
There will
Let
be a lot
people
of
say what's on
discussion.
their minds.
Yeah.
See what happens. Lori, go ahead. Lori?
I just wanted to confirm Ashley's comments that yes, my concern is that I fear that the leadership does not support certain recommendations that are in the master plan. So I am looking for clarification if that is in fact the case. And if that is in fact the case, what do we do from there? Where do we go? Do we just ignore these goals and say, sorry, we're either going to put these on a back burner until the leadership changes? Or are we going to say, this is no longer the priority, so we want to go in a different direction, and what direction do we then want to go in? So that is the guidance that I'm looking for. I have question marks after certain goals and objectives. I want to know, am I right that you are not supportive? Or is it that you're not supportive under certain scenarios? Like maybe you support portions of the goal and objective, but not the way that I'm proposing to implement it. That is what would be helpful for me.
Can I ask specifically if there are specifics of what you felt not supported on, or whether it was a presentation of something that may or may not have gotten the support you looked for, but it was supported, but only to a certain extent? I guess I'm a little unclear about what specifically is not.
Two things, two major economic development initiatives that I've tried over the course of the last year. The first one is the sign and facade program, which was originally funded and then the money was revoked about a month later. And then the second one is the sewer extension project to Route 9. So both of those are specifically stated in the master plan. So, and both of those were not supported. So was it the approach that wasn't supported? Or is it that those are no longer priorities, or they're not priorities of the specific folks who are in leadership?
Or that specific program wasn't supported for whatever that's worth, or the specific proposal. But
so,
but
like, for example, the
general,
sign and facade program.
Yeah.
Is it that they don't support having a sign and facade program ever? Or that it just wasn't something that they wanted to pay for with ARPA money?
See, that's the question. At some point, what wasn't supported may not necessarily mean the board didn't support it. It just meant that presentation itself. So I was more curious about where that sentiment was coming from rather than, looking for a point of, disparity.
Right. And
Yeah.
at the sewer
Right, well-
extension program, specifically, I had couched that so that assuming that we get the grant, it wouldn't have cost the town of Northborough a dime. So I thought that would be very much supported by the leadership, but it was not. So it was a vote of 4 against and 1 in support. So that was overwhelming negative reaction to bringing sewer to Route 9. So that really
Yeah.
caught me off guard.
Okay.
The other thing that's related to the select board and their decisions and, to Millie's point, was it those specific projects or the concept in general, and that this meeting of the minds could clear that up.
Thank you.
We also have to look at the planning board and the whole 10, how many meetings over the MBTA housing, and how can we create these overlay districts so as to not get too much dense housing into a downtown area, which is part of the master plan revitalization of downtown, was to talk about increased housing. So there was conflict there too. And is that just specific
Sure.
to that mandate by the state, or is it conceptually just not something we want? And I think that this letter is going to bring those two boards together. And I have to say, unless Rick, maybe you should attend, but 3 of those 10 people are on this committee. They should be able to represent the master plan implementation point of view as members of the planning and select board, with maybe some direction from Rick and Ashley, or, just like, but I don't think all of us, although there'll be not, instead of 11, an additional 9 people there is just not going to make it go fast, go better.
Yeah.
I just want to make the point that although Lori is kind of on the front line of this, it's our job we were authorized as a committee to oversee or report back to the town as to how things were going with the master plan, as to where things were being done and where things weren't done, and our ideas about how to continue to move the master plan forward. So getting this clarity and decisions made, although it's important for Lori to be able to effectively do her job, and probably others on the staff also. It's really for us to understand how much of the goals in this master plan we need to continue to advocate and push for, and where some of these goals just don't seem to be on the priority list
Priorities.
of the select board or the planning board right now. And so we'll back off or see if in fact there's some changes that need to be made. So I think the purpose of really having these meetings and getting this clarity is for us to be
Okay.
able to get some clarity as to which of these goals we think have the potential to actually be accomplished, or some modified version of them, so we can continue to do our job, which is to advocate for the goals in the plan, to report on the status of them, and to try and understand if there are goals that haven't been done yet, why not? Or if they're being done differently, why is that the case? So I think that's the role we play. And although on a day-to-day basis, Lori and others on the staff, deal with this, our responsibility is to try and understand if there are 106 of these goals, eventually, how many of them got done? And the ones that didn't get done, why not? Kind of thing. And once that's done, kind of our reason for existence kind of goes away, kind of thing. But as long as there are goals in this plan that are still pending, we need to continue to advocate for, understand why that's the case.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So let's do a little role playing here. The master plan was written before COVID. Is that correct?
It was concluded in 2020, so right in the middle of COVID.
Okay. And would you agree that commerce has changed dramatically since COVID?
Mm.
We see storefronts closing all the time. If let's just, pretend that we're having this meeting and someone says, well, what kind of commerce do you see being successful in Northborough? What would the answer be?
Well, I guess the question is more, what kind of commerce would we like to see in Northborough to begin with? And then how do you go about incenting that to happen? I think the question right now is disagreement about exactly what people would like to see and how to get there.
Yeah, I
Well,
think
what
it's
I'd like to see is
more,
stuff that's just not gonna ever come back.
Well,
but I think that's not for us to figure out. I think it's more about how, what do we, how do the residents, including the members of these boards, want to see this town? And how does that tie into these goals of the master plan? We don't have to get into the weeds on everything,
Yeah.
and do we need an economic development coordinator to help us figure this out, and which businesses will be successful and which won't, and do we need sewer for things? But I think coming up with that clearer vision, and then we can tie back to that when a sewer extension program comes up, and we can say, well, listen, we all agree that we want X for our town. This sewer helps us to move that along. I think it has to be high level. But I know what you're saying, Julianne. It's hard, but we can't get that far in
well,
with all
let's
those
get back
people
to
in
the
one
letter.
room, I think.
Yeah.
But
Let's just, the purpose of the letter was to incent, at this point, the planning board and the select board to spend some time and consider these particular goals and economic development in general and reach some consensus about what the town needs to do. So I think the letter, for the most part, does that. I think we've agreed that we'd send the letter to the select board and the planning board. We've agreed that we would leave the reference to those 5 economic development goals in the letter. And Ashley, you commented to try and make the letter a little bit stronger, to bring out earlier on in the letter the fact that we're recommending that there needs to be some consensus between the select board and the planning board around kind of where we're going with this, as opposed to leaving that at the end to bring some of that closer to the beginning. So I'm not sensing a lot of changes to the letter at this point, with the exception of dropping the zoning board of appeals as a recipient and trying to emphasize at the beginning of the letter a little bit more the purpose for why we're sending the letter in the first place. Are there any other comments about the letter besides dropping the zoning board of appeals and trying to put something in the first paragraph that brings out more strongly the purpose of the letter? Are there any other changes anyone else would like to make to the letter?
Can you go over to page 2?
Yep.
Is that you, Lori or Rick?
Yeah, I'll have to share my screen again.
So do we want to add on the select board, planning board, and MPIC should consider the joint meeting? Is that the only thing that that might be clarified?
I think to Fran's point, I think that it's not going to be useful to have the MPIC as part of this joint meeting.
I think we need to be there. We don't need to all be there, but
like I agree. I don't think we need to all be, that everybody needs to be there, but I think there should be if you will, the spokesperson representative, because otherwise we're just gonna have equal members of different parts of the boards chiming in with not necessarily the right role or direction.
Why don't we do this? Once the letter goes to the select board, I'll contact Mitch. Basically say as chair of the MPIC, that at the point that the extent the select board agrees with us, planning board agrees with us, to the extent they're going to set up an initial meeting to sort of talk through this, that I'd like to be invited to sort of provide some perspective from the MPIC as to why we sent this letter in the first place.
So you would
Why
send
don't you
that
just
to,
include a representative from the MPIC in the sentence? Then you don't just, like Millie
Yeah.
said, it's solved at the
and you'd
outset.
send that to Mitch and Carrie, the chair of both boards, just to,
Well, the last paragraph says, you know, the MPIC will continue to assist in efforts to move forward with economic development and downtown revitalization. Which we could add some wording in that the MPIC will continue to assist in efforts to move forward with economic development and downtown revitalization, and will provide a representative to any meetings or discussions that the select board and planning board have about this topic, or something like that.
No, I
it's
think
great,
we
but
need to
again,
say that we're going to be there. I think we need to be there.
yeah,
I'm saying that,
I don't think it's up to the, I think we need to be there to guide them. And I don't think we can just say, hey, we think you guys should have this meeting, have fun. Like, I think we need to say a representative from the MPIC will be there. I think we should lead the discussion.
I agree.
I don't think we can just leave it up to
Because,
them. That's
yeah,
not
even
fair.
though, you know, to me, even though we're representatives of the MPIC, you know, I'm coming in from the Historic District Committee. Everybody's coming in from a different faction at some point. So what I bring might be very limited and may not necessarily fit in even with this part of the letter. So I definitely think that we need to have that agent of representation. Otherwise, I don't feel like we're gonna spend a lot of time discussing things that are necessarily in our heads, but not necessarily efficient time-wise.
So what I'm hearing is that MPIC will lead the discussion. And you know, back to your point, Rick, maybe the next move really would be to sit down with Mitch and Carrie and figure out an agenda. And, you know, because there's a lot and we have to break it down a little bit, right?
But you're kind of asking Mitch and Carrie, who aren't members of this committee, to then take on the role of representing this committee to
Yeah, I think
the
we need to
board.
come up with the agenda. I think we need to lead
And-
it. We're asking for them to come and listen and contribute to the discussion, but we are asking for this meeting. We feel that it's necessary and we have the full perspective of
This is
why.
on the MPIC. And we're asking these, to your point, Ashley, we're asking these other committees to really begin to take on these elements of this progress. But you know, I think if we're not, if there's nobody from the NPIC leading the way, it's not going anywhere.
Ashley, if you're willing, I think you should represent the MPIC.
I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that, but
You got it. You've nailed it. You have the passion. So
Wasn't what I
me
was aiming
too.
for, but
You got to speak up on this.
well, I think if we're gonna do that, I have a responsibility to represent the committee. I understand where Ashley is coming from. Just the tone of this letter changes. The tone of the letter was, our job as a committee is to report the status of the plan. Your job as town leadership is to make it happen. Here are some things that aren't happening. Do something about it.
Rick, I don't think
But
our
what I'm
committee just
hearing is
reports the
instead
status
is
of the
our
plan.
job as the committee is to make sure the master plan gets implemented. And so we're gonna lead you guys down the path.
Yeah,
That's a completely different tone that this letter tried to state.
No, I don't see it that way, Rick.
No.
It is,
I
it's like a
think-
power play. I feel like it's kind of a power play, and I don't support it.
Well,
You don't
I
support-
mean,
This doesn't seem like it's gonna work together. It's like, here's our plan, this is what we came up with, and you guys need to listen, and you're not doing it, so here we are, we're gonna stronghold you. I'm just putting it out there, I don't like the tone of the letter, I don't like the things that are included in it, I think it's too much muscle, personally. It doesn't say teamwork.
Well, I disagree that we need to send a status out on where things stand on the plan. And I think we need to indicate areas that need some attention. The question is, who's going to lead that and drive that?
and I don't necessarily think that it felt that way. I can see how it could be taken that way, but I don't necessarily think that I myself as a member of the planning board would look at this and say, oh, well, that was really harsh. I would look at it and say, okay, tell us what we need to do, in the sense of where's your feedback coming from and what's the priority, and we'll do what we need to do, how to get there. Whether it's stoning or whether it's bylaws or whether I honestly think this sounds like a good initiative to say, okay, we got to get working on this.
Yeah, and Jen,
I
just
like that.
just to clarify, Jen, the addition of us saying we will help lead this meeting and we want to get your feedback, is that improving the tone of the letter, or is that going in the opposite direction? I wasn't clear on your feelings about it. Just want to make sure I understand. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, you're muted.
Yeah,
There
sorry.
you go.
Um,
That's right.
I just think that you guys developed the plan in 2020, whatever you said, initially, and then, pulled out and did the downtown part. And, the people in those boards, they listen to each thing as an individual thing that comes up. And for us to say, it's one thing to say, hey, by the way, here's a few things that you haven't looked at. It's another thing to say, look at all this stuff, pay attention. I don't know. I think it's, I just think it's a power play. And I think this is kind of like a power conflict, because people are not doing this or they're not following the plan, or they don't respect the information that was provided. I don't know.
I mean, if you think about
I don't see
the
that
next
at
to
all,
last
but
paragraph, it says the select board may want to consider joint discussions. Now it'll be with the planning board, or conducting community forums with residents. We're not even saying they should. We're
Well,
just
Well, with
saying
Amy's-
they
I
might,
think that's
they might
obvious,
want to
though.
consider.
I
Isn't
think
that
we
kind of
need to
obvious?
request. I'm sorry. I don't think it's a power play at all. I think it's a helpful exercise. It's not forcing them in any way to vote any particular way, but we're requesting a meeting, or a meeting to come together and have an exercise to express our opinions and listen to what we've gathered. And this is all of the work that was done, and here is where we stand. How do you feel about these goals? And us and our job is to push them forward. But if
yeah,
you as a select board and planning board don't agree that these are the right goals, then we need to know that, because either we cross them off. We're not doing another master plan right now. And by the way, we started that master plan in 2016, and it didn't finish in 2020. It's old already, and we're here and we haven't. So I mean, I think it's not anything. We don't have anything against the planning board or select board or their decisions, but they weren't part of that planning process. Very few of us were part of that planning process. And can we all come together and look at this bigger vision? Is this still our vision? Do we all agree that this is the vision? Because if not, maybe the master planning implementation committee needs to think differently about how we're going about this.
And I think that, I feel that this is sort of a check-in, and that's part of, there's a 6 month or there's a 1 year goals. Where are we? And I definitely feel that as a board member, if I weren't on this committee, I wouldn't really be paying a lot of attention to what's going on. And this, to me, if somebody from the master plan came to the board and said, hey, let's have a meeting so that we can check in, see where things are at, where are we falling behind, what should be paid attention to, I think that would be, to me, a helpful piece of, we want to get this moving forward, and this is to become more prioritized.
I agree, Millie.
So John, I'm not exactly clear on your position. So you're saying the letter should be more forceful in not saying the select board may want to consider discussions, but the select board should hold joint discussions coordinated through the MPIC?
I would use the words the MPIC requests that you consider, recommends that you consider a
Yeah,
joint meeting. I think we're at the point where we had at the last meeting too, it came through that there are roadblocks that we have seen among our select board and our land use boards. There does not seem to be consensus. It's no disrespect to any particular member, but if we want to move the master plan forward, we need to make it clear that to achieve these goals, there needs to be consensus that that's where the land use boards would come down on certain decisions, and that the select board would agree to it as well. So bringing those points forward in a discussion is what this is all about, not any power play. But there's no point in our committee if we're not advocating for those things.
exactly. So I think that the word recommend would be maybe more appropriate.
Requests. I mean, that's really what we're doing. We're requesting this meeting, but however you feel like it would come across better. I don't think there's anything
Yeah.
aggressive about that, but
Haven't heard from you recently, Gene. What's your opinion about this?
I think he dropped off. I don't see him here anymore.
See, attendance or no? Yeah.
Gene's not on the call anymore.
Mm.
You know, I'd love for Gene to be here because I mean, it was his great idea that sort of led to this, and I want to make sure we're, I thought he had a great point, and I want to be sure that we're honoring the spirit of that.
Julian, from your perspective, this committee takes a little bit more of an aggressive standpoint in this letter and recommends there is a joint meeting, and that the MPIC is willing to participate and help to lead the initial meeting kind of thing. So we're to that extent, does that seem to make sense to you?
Well, my feeling is always that it's more successful to use gentler language and that we, if whatever you want to say, that we request, or we think it would be very helpful to have a joint meeting. Neither board is going to deny this meeting. I mean,
Right.
I think they're both very curious about what we're doing and want to participate. And I think that some of the confusion about things that they haven't, well, I can say for my board that we haven't approved or then disapproved, is because we haven't been in on the early stages of some of these things. So, bringing us all in a room together and deciding what direction we're going to take will be very valuable. And I still, well, we've been discussing how to word it, and I think gentler and courteous is always better. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and I just disagree with terming this as an aggressive letter. I don't think it's aggressive at all. I mean, we want to all come together and make sure we're all agreeing and moving forward in the same direction for all of our sakes. I don't see it as aggressive at all.
Well, in the spirit of trying to keep this thing moving, I sort of came up with the initial draft of this letter, then Lori made some changes. And then we sent it out to you guys for discussion tonight. With Lori going to be on vacation, Lori, is Michelle going to still be in the office?
Yes, she's gonna be in the office next week.
I'm trying to figure out a way that we can continue to move this along without violating open meeting laws. I mean, if I took another stab at
I
sort
mean,
of,
we can't agree on this tonight.
well, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about this. It's more than just a couple of typographical things we're trying to change.
We should be able to agree on this tonight.
Yeah,
This
We
isn't
can
hard.
also agree that that we trust you to to incorporate our suggestions and go ahead, can't we?
I mean, yeah, I mean, if we
Yeah.
can just sort of reword some of those pieces. I
Let's
think
just
we
edit a
can-
sentence
I mean,
and get it done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we've all agreed that the zoning board does not need to be a player. We
Yep.
all agree that the MPIC in some form or fashion should be a player, at least to start the conversation. And that doesn't have to be said or decided. We're just gonna be a part of it and we can drop off when we feel like we've handed it off well.
Yep.
The bullets all make sense because they're very specific.
Yep.
The references to the goals made sense. So really, the only thing left was, as Ashley put it, to start the letter saying, this is why we're doing this, and actually end it the same way, because that's really how you, when you write something, you start out saying, this is what I want, here's how we're gonna get there, and as a reminder, this is what I said I wanted, and then we're done.
Yeah.
Signed, sealed, and delivered. And if it ends up being Rick and Ashley, because, you know, we want representation, but not 11 of us, even though 3 of us are already gonna be there. That makes perfect sense as well.
Yeah.
Right, and then Laura can go off on vacation.
does that make sense, Rick?
Yeah. There is one thing typographically I want to change. There was a change made. We first said that, you know, some of the recommendations were complete or in progress, others hadn't been done yet, and then a change was made to put some mathematical numbers in here. So the letter now says of some 106 recommendations, approximately 55% have been completed, 12 or underway, 33 or in progress, 14. Some have yet any action taken. So I guess the first thing is, I don't understand the difference between or underway or in progress. That seems like the same thing to me.
I can
What?
explain that.
Okay,
Well, I'm just saying, just for clarity, I think if we just said of some 106 recommendations,
No,
12 have been completed, 47 are underway or in progress, and 47 have yet to have action taken.
no. So if I can explain ongoing. So to me, ongoing means that they will never be completely satisfied. So for example, one recommendation may be that the town should pursue preservation of open space that meets with the town's priorities. That will forever be the history of the town of Northborough until there is no land left to save.
mm-hmm,
So anything that I have identified as ongoing, in my opinion, means that the town is currently doing it and will continue to do it to the end of time.
yep,
If it's in progress, my interpretation of in progress is that it's currently underway and I expect that it will be completed at some point within the period of time that the master plan holds for, which is 10 years.
So
So
then-
that has a period at the end of the sentence and ongoing does not.
Right, except the text doesn't say ongoing, it says underway.
or
I got
underway.
confused between underway and, huh?
Underway has a period. It's the same as, in progress. So, but we could probably, if there are two different terms used, we could streamline that.
Well, if we say of some 106 recommendations, 12 have been completed, 33 are ongoing, and 14 are in progress. But not 33 are underway and 14 are in progress. Underway and in progress mean the same thing to me. I can see where ongoing is a different category. So if we change our underway to our ongoing.
I think you might have changed one of my terms that I used. Maybe
No, I'm
he
just
put
reading,
in
I'm reading
progress,
the
but-
last letter you sent out before Amy's changes.
Yeah, I think I used his exact wording.
Who's exactly?
But now that I'm looking at the actual plan itself. There is an ongoing. There are several ongoings, so
Yeah.
those should be classified here.
Well, I'm not sure at this point.
So there's underway and there's ongoing.
Right.
So we'll get rid of in progress.
Yep. Okay.
So are the numbers different than what's in the letter right now? Is ongoing not 33 at some other number?
I'd have to count it out.
Yeah.
Or can we
I would-
just take
based
the
on
numbers
that-
out?
Based on that, Lori, I would actually change one of the NCH4 from underway that I had put into ongoing.
Okay.
But they're gonna have a copy of the matrix attached.
They will, yeah.
And just so you know, this is still being updated. So there was attempts to get Scott Charpentier to chime in, as well as school superintendent.
Mhm.
So I know Michelle has the notes of what the school superintendent said, but it isn't reflected in the spreadsheet yet. And she hasn't yet heard from Scott, so that will be incorporated. So these numbers will change.
Yeah, but when does the letter become final? These numbers are always gonna
I
change.
wouldn't send it out until the spreadsheet's final. So she said she was gonna work on it next week.
But Julianne, I think you've got a target date. There's some meeting you guys have coming up where you said it'd be good to get this letter before the select board, before some planning meeting you've got coming up.
So, our goal meeting. So we have a goals meeting July 29th and goal setting for the select board. And then August 1st, we have what Tim is describing as a financial summit, where select board is meeting with appropriations and financial planning. So if this letter, could come out, well, actually, probably, would it be beneficial to have the meeting before any of those? I think it's important that we get the request for the meeting before any of those, but that should be no problem, right? I mean, July 20th.
Like I said, Michelle said that she would speak with, or try to speak with Scott next week. Of course, he's very busy, so it's sometimes a challenge to pin him down.
On the other hand, is the matrix that important to setting a meeting date?
Mm-mm.
Well, if we're including the matrix, then I would say yes, because the letter says enclosed is the matrix.
Right. Well, we can include the matrix, but if we don't reference by count the status of projects, if we just
Right.
say, that certain projects are complete, certain projects are ongoing, certain projects are in progress, and certain projects have yet to be started. And doesn't matter what the matrix says, at the point the letter goes out, you don't have to, the letter doesn't have to compare to the numbers in the matrix. So I would just take all the numbers out. I can just reword that sentence to just say that the projects are in different statuses. And then whenever we attach the matrix to it, it'll show that's the case. And when people look at the matrix, they can see which have been completed, which are ongoing, which are in progress, and which haven't started yet. And we don't have to have a mathematical relationship between the letter and the matrix.
Right.
So is that
I think
okay,
the-
Lori, if I take out those numbers?
Yeah, that was Jean that wanted the numbers added.
Oh, Gene's not here to defend himself anymore.
Gene's
Okay.
out.
But the
You don't-
important thing is that we get this started, you know,
Right.
there's. And
Yeah, I agree.
that will be discussed at the meeting. We'll have all of that information at the meeting, but to organize the meeting, we don't need that information yet now.
But the matrix should definitely be attached when this letter goes out. So I guess where we are now is I can make that change. I can change the wording a little bit from the select board may want to consider to more of that the MPIC recommends that the select board and planning board meet jointly to discuss these situations, and that the MPIC, something wording to the effect the MPIC will also be represented at least the initial meeting. And then take kind of the general purpose of the letter and put something up in the first paragraph that basically highlights the reason we're sending this letter in the first place, to sort of stress, you know, what we're trying to accomplish here. So basically the two changes would be changing the may want to consider something a little bit stronger, but respectful, and moving something up into the first paragraph to better indicate the reason we're sending this letter, to strengthen that a little bit.
And I think that's fine.
So when do you think you would be able to send it out?
So what I'll do is I'll try and get the
Well-
letter done in the next day or so.
Uh-huh.
And then I think when Lori comes back from her vacation, she can attach the most current version of the matrix to it. And the letter can go out first week in July. July 1st is a Monday, right? You'll be back on July 1st, Lori?
Yes, July 1st.
Because our next select board meeting, I'm pretty sure is July 12th, where we will be continuing to discuss ARPA money. And I know several of the members, at least two of us, want money to go to economic development. And I think that this letter speaks to the need for that, obviously. That's pretty clear. So having that letter before our next meeting, even if it's just the letter and no meeting, will be, you know, good evidence that we really should allocate money from ARPA for economic development. Was I very confusing there?
Well, yeah, I mean that. I think one of the points the letter is making is before we spend a lot of money on economic development, we need to get a better feel
Yeah.
for between the select board and the planning board where that emphasis should come and how it should work. And once again, referencing some of the specific economic development goals in the plan that come out in the letter here. What's the position of those two boards around ED 2.1, ED 2.4, and ED 4.1 and H 2.4? Those are the ones that not a lot has happened and some decisions need to be made about. And then I think based on understanding where that's going, it'll be clearer as to how best to support moving forward on those. Or if the boards decide that ED 2.4 doesn't make any sense, or it made sense in 2016, but doesn't make sense anymore. That could have some bearing on where this is all going, or if the board says all 5 of these goals are outdated, don't make any sense anymore because, 2016, 2017, 2018, the world looked one way and now it looks completely different.
Mhm.
So I think that's the first question the letter's trying to get at. What is it that we want to do? And it's not up to the MPIC to make that decision. It's really up to the select board and the planning board that have the responsibility to sort of make those decisions. And then knowing that, how do we go about and do those things? And if the answer is all of these goals make a lot of sense, we really need to do them, then I think the recommendation to spend money on them and to get a staff position to coordinate it, put some sort of committee together to work with the staff support, all that makes sense, but at least there's a conscious decision's been made that we really want to do these goals. They make sense. We want to do them. This is the time frame we want to do them in, and this is how we have to get organized to do them. So I think it's good to set some ARPA money aside for economic development, but I think it's also the point of the letter is let's figure out exactly how we're gonna respond to these goals. And if the goals make sense and we want to do them, that gives us a clear path as to the support we need to get them done. I think the concern is it's not clear to our committee, where the boards stand, and we've heard there's been just some kind of
You're cutting
noise
out, right?
around in general. Do we need housing or don't we
You're
need
cutting
housing?
out.
And how much housing do we need to make the downtown more viable? As an example, there are people on these boards that I think feel that, it's a stretch to put any more housing downtown. It's going to cause more problems than it solves. And yet the master plan and the downtown revitalization plan said housing in the downtown is a critical component to success. So that's got to get wrestled to the ground between the decision makers as to do they agree or disagree, or is there some in-between position there that needs to be done? Yes, as an example. So I think it'd be a good idea to get this letter in front of the select board before the next time they meet, because it's going to be asking the select board to do something.
Mhm.
How far down the road you want to go in terms of setting aside money. I would never disagree with setting aside opera money to spur economic development, but I think before it gets spent, we need to have a clearer picture as exactly what we're going to spend it on and why. Anyway,
Lori, if there were some typographical things in the matrix, would I just bring those up with Michelle?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay,
So that way when I come back from vacation, it's almost ready to go.
okay, easy enough.
I think what I'll do also is I see Ashley's not with us anymore. I'll send Ashley an email tomorrow and ask her to send me some wording that she would like to see at the beginning of the letter to sort of express, how to position this so that I can get some input from her, because she was coming on pretty strong tonight about wanting to move some of the thoughts in the end of the letter up to the front of it. So ask her for some specific wording she'd like to put in there, and I could factor that in.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
Rick, do you
Rich.
just want consensus and or a motion by us to just say you can do this without reconvening us again?
I
That
think
you
that's
understand what
that's a
the,
sense I'm getting from the committee tonight.
Yep.
Is that I should just, based on what we've heard tonight, just make these changes, get this letter in next week to Michelle, so when Lori comes back next Monday, a week from Monday, she has a letter. I think it's important to attach the matrix, so take the current status of the matrix at that point, attach it to it, and get it out to the select board and the planning board. And as we've agreed, it's not going to go to the zoning board.
sounds good.
Any other suggestions or comments about that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, it's 9:00. Let's pass over and come around again on a discussion about what else is in the matrix and what we want to work on. I've got a couple of things I want to talk about, but let's do that at a subsequent meeting. The other thing, we've got minutes to vote on, which we can do in a minute. The other thing I just want to ask about is meetings of this committee in the summer. Right now, we'd be scheduled to meet the third Thursday in July, and then again the third Thursday in August. I'm just wondering, based on people's schedules, do we feel that we want to meet continually in the summer? Do we want to skip the July or the August meeting based on who's going to be where and who's doing what? Is there anybody that would have a feeling we ought to skip a meeting this summer, or should we just go ahead and continue to meet third Thursdays? Any input on that?
I mean, I
Well,
don't know. Sorry.
ahead.
I don't know if anything timely wise is going to change for us if we don't meet, but I'm happy to be able to meet based on what's needed.
Right, and I was gonna say the same. I think we could skip one of the two. Just trying to think whether it's more important that we come back in July based on, what we're asking of the select board, because they're gonna be making a decision in July for August, right? And then
Mhm.
maybe we can pass on a meeting in August because some of us may be at their meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Lori, what's your perspective? Do you think there's a reason we have to meet both times in the summer?
Well, I only have one planning board meeting in July, and that's gonna be on the 16th. So I suppose I could report on the 18th what happened at the planning board meeting on the 16th. And then, we could schedule that joint meeting, assuming we've heard from the select board. When are you meeting with the select board? You said the 12th?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Is that a
So-
Monday?
So do you think at that meeting, they would act on whether or not to schedule the joint meeting with the planning board? And then, we can work on the actual coordination after that point. So do you think it would be more valuable to meet on July 18th versus August?
July 18th would be the third Thursday.
MPIC.
July 18th for what meeting?
For the MPIC meeting?
Is that the third Thursday?
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, and the 12th of July is a Friday.
Oh. Okay, so so I think it must be the second or third. Let me see. Third Monday in July.
That's the 15th.
It's the 15th. Okay, so it must be the 15th. I have it written down someplace else. Can you hold on 1 second?
Lori, what would you be reporting from the 16th, from the planning board meeting on the 16th?
So what we could put on the agenda is, kind of this discussion.
Okay,
They would have received a letter by that point. And then, we could kind of just, get confirmation from the planning board that that they're okay with having this joint meeting. And then if I hear the same from the planning board, I mean, the select board, then we could just coordinate schedules and figure out some time in August to hold that meeting.
so, but would that necessarily require a meeting from the MPIC, or is that something that could be communicated through email?
We could also communicate that by email, sure.
Yeah,
Okay,
so maybe it doesn't make sense for us to meet again in July because the pieces to the puzzle aren't even gonna be on the table yet. And
Not
you're only gonna find out from the
solidified.
select board on the 15th, the planning board on the 16th. Why would we meet on the 18th,
Yeah,
Okay,
right?
sure.
All right. So let's plan that our next meeting will be the third Thursday in August. If for some reason something develops that
That's
causes
fine.
us to need to meet sooner than that, Lori can inform that and we can see if we have to get together in July or not. But for now, let's plan to not meet in July and come back in August, see what happens.
August 15th.
Yep.
All right, the last item is the minutes from May 23rd, which were distributed. Are there any changes or comments to the May 23rd minutes? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the May 23rd minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Julianne,
Aye.
Millie,
I abstained. I wasn't at that meeting.
Fran,
Aye.
Gene Kennedy, oh, he's not with us anymore. Rick Lee votes aye. John Campbell,
Aye.
Jen Tolman,
Aye.
May 23rd minutes are approved. Okay, I'll try and make progress on the revised letter. Get that done for next week. And then, when Lori comes back, that letter will be distributed with whatever the current status of the matrix is, the first week in July to the select board and the planning board. And we'll take it from there. Lori, you hear any feedback from either board, or, if there's something you hear, Julianne, that's, has some bearing on the MPIC, you can let Lori or I know and we'll decide what to do next.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, thank you all tonight. We're sort of dragging our way down the road here, making progress, and try
Thank
and
you,
stay
Rick.
cool. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
And we
Move to
should-
adjourn.
Please, can
Lori,
we
good
see some of
vacation.
you at Porch Fest on Saturday?
Mhm.
I'll
You
be
want
at
a motion to
Church at
adjourn?
3:30 with some buddies of mine playing guitar. If you want to listen to some music from the 60s at 3:30 on Saturday at Trinity Church.
All right.
We love
Right
music.
after I
from the
get out of
60s.
work, Rick, I'll be right over.
Okay,
It'll be a great show.
okay.
It's gonna be fun.
Mhm.
Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.